Hello, everybody. Welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
Patreon content, front of house again today. Day 2, James, which is a Money in Football podcast today.
This is Suj's idea. This is where Suj goes on lengthy rants about how people run football clubs really badly. Think about stuff we've done in the past on the likes of Bury and Wigan and corruption and whatnots. And if you come for the FPL stuff, see you another time this week. What we're going to be talking about today is some of the bizarre circumstances that have been going on around Birmingham City Football Club, particularly made some mainstream news very recently because of one, how would you describe him, character, Suj?
Get
into it.
Simon Jordan would describe him as a buffoon, and I think buffoon is a fair word to use. It's funny, this Money in Football, okay, we've picked this particular topic today, but there are so many that we could have, not least, like Blatter and Platini in the last week have been cleared of their allegations.
No, me neither.
So you're like, just pick a list of topics. Like this is, I have a real problem with football. It's the gutter of some stuff, but yeah, this is a homegrown story, let's say, about a British club, English club in the heart of England that has had a turbulent time for the last 10 years at least, and the story is just getting more and more bizarre as it stands, and again is like a warning flag against the perils of foreign ownership.
Do you want to do now or do you want to do previous first on Birmingham?
Previous.
You want to do a bit of previous?
Yeah, definitely previous of how they've got to where they are. Because like we were talking just off air, the record of winning a cup and getting relegated in the same season, which they share with Wigan.
Yes, correct. Very rare record. So I think this story kind of dates back to 2011, really, where Birmingham City won the League Cup final against a very strong Arsenal side. You know, it's a dig I like to get in now and again. One of my favourite ever goals scored by a non-Tottenham player, Obafemi Martin's brilliant tap-in injury time winner in that final. But they finished the season badly, got relegated. Alex McLeish left the club, and then a month after that, Carson Young, the owner, was arrested. 3 years later, he was imprisoned for 6 years, Suj.
Mm-hmm.
Why was he imprisoned?
Corruption?
Money laundering, basically. And Birmingham have been kind of in a survival battle since then, where they've gone through many, many managers. I mean, their list of managers, I could just throw you some names. After these, you won't even remember. Since
10 or 12 in just the last 7 or 8 years.
To be honest, I had to screenshot a list of these because I'll forget some. Chris Hughton, Lee Clark, Gary Rowett, Gianfranco Zola was absolutely disastrous. And actually, they were doing okay under Gary Rowett. But it was thought that I found out he was trying to engineer a move potentially to somewhere else, wouldn't sign a new contract. They sacked him. They were 7th in the championship, doing quite well. Zola came in, he won like 2 out of 22 games. Harry Redknapp came in and he won 2 of their last 3 games, kept them up. Then they gave Redknapp a load of money that they didn't have. This has been a familiar, unfortunate story with Harry Redknapp at previous clubs, which is part caused this problem. They had Steve Cottrell come in, Gary Monk, Pep Clotte, Aita Karanka, and Lee Bowyer's obviously recently left the club.
Yeah, other than, Bowyer's not hugely experienced, but none of those names are unheard of. Like, they've all managed other clubs and had a relative amount of success. Most people won't know much about Pep Clotte, and they won't know much about John Eustace, who's taking the job now either, the general. They probably know more about him as a player than as a manager.
Yeah, a little bit unheralded. Coventry, Watford, and you're going to hear a bit more about Watford on this podcast, I think. But he's got the job now. Financially, they're losing serious amounts of money on a regular, and it's only heading one way if someone doesn't change that soon. To give you an indication of the state of the football club, obviously last year was the first year back from COVID where we could have full attendances. Birmingham City fans were notified shortly before the beginning of last season that most of them who had bought season tickets would not be able to go to St Andrews and would have to take part in a ballot to be able to get into the ground.
Yep.
The reason for that being that the stadium had been left in such a,
state of neglect.
I guess it hadn't been used.
Safety issues and whatever.
Etc. Loads of the support structures for the lower tiers were rotting away to the point that were unsafe. And actually, Birmingham went back into St Andrews to start the season with a maximum capacity of, I think it was about 10,500. The stadium technically can seat 29,000, never had more than, I think it's about 18,500 in the ground this season. The Athletic wrote a report in January saying how that Birmingham was saying that was going to get sorted very soon. As far as I'm aware, that situation is still not resolved.
And I think if you're an owner who's about to sell the club, why would you bother?
I'm trying to think, what do we hear all the time? When I say to people, Premier League games should be shown live at 3:00, even if they're pay-per-view, what do I always get thrown back at me? Oh, you've got to protect lower league attendances. And then they can't even get their own fans into a football stadium.
Yeah,
surely that's where the first investment of money should be going right now.
They need to fix up the stadium. Exactly that. But we're in a situation where it's very clear that the owners who own the football club want to sell it, and therefore they're not going to spend any money, mate. Not on stuff like that. Not on anything that's not going to increase the value of the club. So I think they're definitely obviously hemorrhaging money at the moment. The one thing is that the current owners, they are plugging the gap or what have you, although they do have quite big debts. And whoever comes in and buys a club is going to have to fill these debts.
So the current owners are Hong Kong based?
Yes.
Birmingham Sports Holdings Limited, or it might be Limited Holdings. Sorry, I might have the wrong way around.
There's a company in the British Virgin Islands owned by a company in Hong Kong, floated on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, that probably pays its tax in the Cayman Islands and has got owners that reside in another tax haven and another tax haven. But let's just assume, for argument's sake, ultimately it's China / Hong Kong, which is China. So yes, they are in the Far East, but maybe funneling ownership through a couple of tax havens or a tax haven in the British Virgin Islands.
What we know with certainty is that Birmingham City's largest shareholder confirmed, I think it was on the 14th of June, that 21.6% of the football club had been sold.
Correct.
To who, Suj?
Well, they didn't disclose that. But when you have a company that's listed on the stock exchange, and if you're going to make a material change like selling off those kind of assets, you do have to disclose that information. And so they had to disclose that they'd divested of that 21.6% of the club. But they didn't say to who. And I don't think anyone has officially said, yes, I've bought it. Maybe they're not allowed to, but maybe one individual has implied that it might be him. But no one has actually, we don't know who it is, but everyone assumes that it could be Bassini.
Birmingham Sports Holdings Company still has 75% ownership of Birmingham City.
Yep.
But they are moving it on, right? That seems fairly obvious.
The intention is to sell the football club.
Right, okay.
Simple as that, yeah. The intention is to sell the football club.
The individual that Suj is referring to is a gentleman called Lawrence Bassini. Who was, I don't know if you know this, Suj, it was Lawrence Bassini.
Bassini.
Should I just leave this to you?
And he's a top guy. As in, he's a lovely bloke.
Come on,
I don't want to say anything negative and
in case he gets your phone number and
sleep
calls
with
you
the
up.
fishes.
By the way, if anyone wants to call Lawrence Bassini, it's so easy to find his phone number on the internet.
You wake up with a horse's head in your bed, James.
I've also seen some other things to Lawrence Bassini on the internet which are quite incriminating as well, which I would not recommend anyone goes looking for.
Did you know that his dad was a mafia boss? Do you know in New York back in the days when there was obviously the mafia were running New York, Italian mafia specifically. There were the 5 families they used to talk about. I heard that Bassini's dad was one of the dons in the mafia there in New York. Here comes the start of his dodginess.
Come on.
But yeah, that's what I heard. So that's why I think he's a lovely bloke. And I don't want to, wake up dead tomorrow for slagging the guy off. But he is a buffoon.
Right. You've just slagged him off, mate.
Yeah, I think we have. But the rumours are that it's him. There was another party that were interested in taking over Birmingham as well, that were headed up by Maxi Lopez.
Former Barcelona player.
Yeah, and a local businessman, I think Paul Richardson is his name, yeah. But it doesn't feel like they have the momentum that they need.
Bassini's just a chancer, isn't he?
Yeah, Bassini's, if you look at his historical record, as a Birmingham City fan, you would shit yourself that this is the guy coming in to take over your club.
Really, really would.
There's nothing in his track record and his business history that indicates he's anywhere near the amount of money that he would need to do what he says he's going to do.
How many times been made bankrupt?
Twice,
okay.
Which we can talk about. And on top of that, he's obviously been on the radio in the last couple of weeks a few times with TalkSport, most notably last week. And the types of numbers that he's throwing around in that interview, I struggle to see where he would be getting that money from, other than another point which we'll come on to, which is external sources of finance. It's not his money per se. And then we have to ask the question, whose money? But if I said to you, but this guy's going to buy your football club, and he has been made bankrupt twice, James.
That's alarm bells already.
He's had a 3-year ban from serving in football for deceiving his fellow directors, taking money out of the business, and dodgy as hell.
This is from his ownership at Watford. Which, I mean, Watford were given a transfer embargo and all sorts. He
had to pay other owners, other directors in Watford. A court order declared that he owed them £3.5 million, which he never paid because of declaring bankruptcy. So he's done over his fellow directors to the tune of £3.5 million, proven in court. That's another thing. And then when his ban was up, I mean, admittedly, his ban would have been up in 2015, 16, something like that. 3 years later, he tried to take over Bolton and failed.
Hold on. He stood outside the Reebok, as I would always call it, or the new Burnham Park for the older Bolton fans, and just stood there with a megaphone.
No, but he got as far as, I mean, Bolton were in administration. He spoke to the administrators and struck a deal.
But supposedly,
and they said, fine, show us your money.
He also considered buying Bury as well.
He did. Well, we haven't finished with his list of clubs that he wants to buy.
Crack on.
He did a deal with the administrators at Bolton, and they said, show us the money. And he didn't have the money to show them. And so that deadline passed, and a couple other deadlines passed, and that never materialized. He actually managed to stop the current owners, Venture Holdings, I think they're called, from buying the club temporarily, because he felt he had a deal, and a court did say that delayed the purchase of it, but eventually he disappeared. Wigan sniffed around when they were in administration. Bury, Oldham. He'll go wherever he thinks there's money to be made here.
Yeah.
He sniffs around clubs in trouble.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. All them clubs you mentioned, Bury, Bolton, Oldham. I bet if you look, you'll probably find Macclesfield somewhere. Birmingham now, Wigan. Right, all been in serious trouble.
None of these deals he's been able to get over the line.
Is this guy the next Steve Dale? That would be the concern. Steve Dale, if you don't know, was obviously the guy who kind of ran Bury Football Club into the ground.
Yeah. So this guy declared bankruptcy in 2007, pre-involvement in football. So he is, and I was surprised by this, because if you look on the internet, I mean, I don't know, you might disagree. I think he looks older than 52. He's only 52 years old. I thought he was late 50s, 60s.
Oh, that's harsh. It's a bit personal now.
I think he's older than he is. But 2007, so what's that, 14?
Most people think I look older than you, and I don't.
15 years ago, so he would have been 37. So he'd have been the same age as you, give or take. I've given away James's age. Apologies.
Thanks, sweetheart. I feel better now.
Don't worry, there's still hope for you to try and own a football club, get yourself bankrupt twice, and try and buy 2 or 3 other football clubs before you're 52, mate.
I'm going to Enfield Town tonight to watch Spurs under 21s. I might have some talks.
Yes. So 37, 38, right? That's not young.
Thanks, mate. I'm feeling better.
It's not young to know. You should be old enough to know what you're doing to declare a bankruptcy. Look, people go bust and whatever else, but he went bankrupt in 2007. Then managed to find his way to buying Watford. The price he paid for Watford at the time, do you know?
No, but I bet it was pittance.
£440,000.
Jesus. What year was this?
2012 he bought Watford, I think.
That's staggering.
2012. So he managed to buy the club. I mean, borrowed money, and he had business partners in there. So I'm very sceptical as to whether or not he put cash on the table in as part of that deal. But advanced him. He was only the owner of Watford for a year. Advanced himself £1.5 million in cash, which never got repaid. And that was part of the reason why he obviously got booted out in the end, and then fit and proper person. He's banned from football and all the rest of it. To the extent that on his way out, he called the police because one of the members of staff at Watford Football Club wouldn't give him the keys to the safe. I want to know who this member of Watford Football Club staff is, because they deserve a medal. They were like, nah, fuck you, mate. We're not giving you the keys to the safe. He wanted the keys to the safe. There's something in the safe that he wanted. They wouldn't give it to him. And he called the police on him.
It's like Bob or Denise, who's been at Watford as the tea lady or tea man forever.
But fair play, So he got booted out, and then obviously the court case with the not the Pozzos, what are the other two brothers? But anyway, he owed them $3.5 million. He sold the Pozzos, who he sold the club to, right, ultimately. But a year to own a football club for a year, you're going to lose money. But then to take $1.5 million out in cash, how or why? So declared that he owes these guys millions of pounds. So 2014, after this court case has happened and he had other debts to pay, didn't make payments, bankruptcy again. So in 2014, he's declared bankrupt.
Yep.
2019 is when he starts rattling around Bolton and all of the other stuff, right? There's not been any indication
What year was Berry? Was that that was the same time, wasn't it?
1920.
19, yeah. He's 22 now, I think. Yeah, 19, yeah.
The history of all of his nonsense is crazy, right? And we talk about how he behaves in a second. But ultimately, he's gone on TalkSport last week and said that he's transferred 30 million to the lawyers of the lawyers that are managing the transaction. That's the money he's buying the football club for. And that he has 70 to 80 to 100 million ready to invest in the football club to win the league, as he puts it. And when he was doing that interview, he talked about his own personal wealth and assets. And he started rambling on about all Lawrence Bassini's £200 million of property, and that doesn't include all my assets on Oxford Street and here, then the other. He was throwing around a lot of numbers to the tunes of hundreds of millions that he's potentially worth. I don't see a path from 2014 bankruptcy to hundreds of millions of pounds and property all over Oxford Street within 7-8 years that would make it easy for him to go and buy this football club. So the financial story doesn't add up to me that he has the money. I don't think Lawrence Bassini has a penny to his name, or he's definitely got some money, but I don't think he has enough assets. See, the interesting thing is, when he declared bankruptcy in 2014 and he owed the money to his other directors in Watford, he didn't own any property. He didn't own a single piece of property or a company that owned any piece of property. He's taken $1.5 million out in cash over the previous year and a half. What's he done with that money? You'd buy a house or something, surely. But he didn't have any assets to his name, not a single one. So I find it all very dodgy.
So,
what was Carson Young in prison for again? Money laundering?
Let's not even go
there, perhaps. But
so this was in an Athletic article quite recently, where they've said recently Bassini registered 21 new businesses at company's house. From Bassini Cakes, Bassini Clothing, Bassini Soup Kitchen for the homeless and vulnerable people. All were launched with the legal minimum amount of capital of £100.
Yeah,
and
that's normal. If you start a company, you
all are based at the same rented office in Harrow, which is northwest London.
Yep.
Accounts are yet to be filed in any detail, so whether these companies have any assets is unclear. So the only thing we would say is, we can't actually say for certain if he does or doesn't have money. Could these companies somehow have huge assets?
He'd have to put the assets into the business. He'd have to put the assets into the business.
But he probably hasn't got them to put into the business.
Well, I would be surprised if he has or
Talk to me. Why has he got 21 businesses? And why have they been newly registered recently?
It's interesting that you mentioned cakes.
Go on.
What else was there?
This is just a few that was mentioned in an athletic piece. Bassini Clothing Fashion Limited, Bassini Soup Kitchen for the homeless and vulnerable people, Bassini Cakes Limited. This article was written by Greg Evans and Matt Slater on the 25th of June, so it's not that old.
Mate, do we want to
go down the rabbit hole? Yeah, let's go down a rabbit hole. What can we say and can't we say?
If you had do you know, you sometimes see hairdressers shops?
This is why most Money in Football podcasts are going to be on Patreon.
Yeah, it's a fair point. You see hairdressers shops, and you're like, there's never any customers in there. How are they making any money?
Yeah.
Or you see cake shops, and there's never any customers in there, and you're like, how are they making any money? And at the end of the year, they still show healthy accounts, but it just happens to be that the majority of their takings were in cash.
Okay.
A little bit suspicious.
You're saying dodging tax and whatnot?
Yeah. Lawrence Bassini. Here we go. Company's house. Current appointments. Bassini Body Shops Limited. So car maintenance. February 2022. That's one. What else has he got here? There's lots of Lawrence Bassini's. Bassini Spas Limited.
Nice.
April 2022.
You're not going to go for all these, are you?
I might have a look at a few. Bassini Spas. It's funny that they haven't groups of all. Bassini Pizza Limited. When was Bassini Pizza? April 2022.
It's what we're saying. It's all recent, mate.
Bassini Soup Kitchen. February 2022.
So what's the thinking here? Why? What is this?
Bassini Sweets and Chocolates.
I'm the football guy. What is this, Suj?
It's money laundering.
Good job we ain't got any sponsors at the moment. That's all I can say.
Bassini Board Limited. This is bizarre. This is something that you're introducing to me. I didn't read that bit in the thing. Yeah, this is like all of these Bassini accessories, Bassini asset finance, Bassini betting.
Oh, that's good.
Bassini Cosmetics Limited, February 2022. Bassini Handbags Limited, March 2022. Bassini Lettings Limited, April 2022. Bassini Perfumes Limited.
That's good.
February 2022.
At least he smells nice.
Art Galleries Limited, February 2020. Okay, that was a little while ago. So he got into the art game earlier. Bassini Bakeries.
What do you have to do to register a company at Company's House?
You can do it now. It's 20 minutes, mate. $49.99. You just need to name, address, national insurance number, date of birth. You can do it in like 10 minutes.
That's it.
Yeah. Registering a company at Company's House is
so
straightforward.
We could go Nico's Video Editing Limited.
Yeah, you could have that company up and running in 2 hours.
Pop any address we like.
Yeah.
Do we have to prove the address?
Nothing.
So what is this then?
Nothing. This is one of the problems with UK limited companies. Now, we're in the process of setting up companies in France, Spain and Italy for the packaging business. And it's taken months to set these companies up. Months. Like you have to go and get certified documentation, proof of ID. You have to get it stamped at the government office. You have to put a minimum 5,000 euros in, all of this kind of stuff. CRB checked. The directors have to be CRB checked in all these countries. It's taken about 3 months to set these companies up in some of these countries. In England, I can do it in an hour. And Ireland is the same. You can do it in an hour. You just go online and you set up a company. It's a shit process we have here that just means anyone can set up a company and burn it. There is no why would you start 20 companies over the course of a 2
I don't know. Tell me.
Money laundering is my explanation. Like, okay, the pizza shop. Oh, I've got a pizza shop, and we did £50,000 in trading, and you put it in as cash. All my customers paid in cash.
Serious, shouldn't? And I know what you're saying about the English law and stuff. But shouldn't someone at Company's House be going, "You're right, mate"?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, but the thing is, they can only do it retrospectively. They're only going to be able to. He is not obliged to provide any financial information until a year after trading, right? So generally, you have 1 year's accounts, which have to be filed 9 months after the year end. So if your year end is January to December, like ours is, I've got to the end of the following September to file 9 months, which is still quite long, to be honest with you. So if he's launched a company in February, so February to the end of January, he's not obliged to file any information about these new companies that were in February till next year, October, November.
This year.
Well, it was February this year. He doesn't file till next year, October, November. So what he does in that meantime, he can do whatever he likes.
Oh, so he doesn't, so nearly 2 years or 9 months?
Yeah, basically 1 year's accounts are 9 months after, right? So 1 year, 9 months is the first reporting he would do on his accounts.
That's interesting.
And
I've got a theory on that.
Obviously the other thing is VAT. So if his expected turnover is over a certain amount of money, I think it's like 85,000 now, you have to register for VAT. Right? So you have to charge VAT on whatever you sell. If your sales are more than 85 grand or whatever, but that's done quarterly.
How would you use Companies House and companies like this to money launder? Are we allowed to talk about that? Or?
No. So basically, it's cleaning up cash, right? If you've made money in an illegal way, I don't know how. Let's just,
offshore gambling, whatever.
Yeah, well,
cash in hand.
Fuck it. Let's just say we're selling drugs. You and me, James. Planet FPL Weed Farm Limited.
Again.
Weed farm, right? So we've grown a bunch of weed. We've sold £1,000 worth of weed. We've got £1,000 in cash sitting on the table now. What are we going to do with it? You can just go and spend it, right? Yeah. But if it's 20 grand or 50 grand, what are you going to do with it?
Spend it.
So we open up a cake shop on the high street.
Okay.
There's rent to pay, £1,000 a month. There's staff to pay, whatever. But that cash you bank as takings in your shop. And obviously you're going to have to pay out costs and you're going to have to pay out tax. But if you have 50 grand in cash, you'd rather have 25 grand legitimate in your bank account that you can use than 50 grand in cash lying around. How many times are you going to go out to the restaurant or buy bottles of champagne? So these businesses, if when he files his accounts, the revenue line is like £200,000 for his Bassini pizzas. He's got a little pizza shop that does £200,000 in takings, and it happens to be that 80% or 90% of the takings were cash as opposed to cards. That would be a red flag. Who pays with cash these days? No one.
No.
Nah.
There is a cafe near here. Nico knows about it. It's cash only.
Yeah, man. He's not paying.
And the toilets have been out of order for about a year.
Yeah.
But it's nice. It's good coffee.
Yeah, breakfasts are big. So that's what people do. They're showing takings, cleaning it through a business like that. You must have seen Breaking Bad. You never seen Breaking Bad?
No, I didn't watch it.
Los Polos. Nico, you seen Breaking Bad? It's probably the most revenue a chicken shop ever makes. The guy's got a chicken shop as his front, right?
He doesn't make
a chain of chicken.
He doesn't make more than
chicken shops.
Can't do.
But obviously, yeah, the money's being cleaned through the chain of chicken shops,
right?
As takings when it's cash like that. So that's probably what. But it's very bizarre for any individual to launch that many businesses across that wider spectrum in that shorter period of time.
So
I hadn't seen that. That's made me laugh.
In theory,
you've entertained me this
good.
morning.
In theory, if Lawrence Bassini, and humour me, because I think it's fair to say Lawrence Bassini's not going to.
I shouldn't accuse him of money laundering, but he's dodgy.
He's not the guy at Birmingham, is he? He's not this guy that's bought to 21.6%. It can't be, can he?
Yeah, it'd be difficult. I don't know.
There's a guy on Twitter who's worth following for people who kind of want to keep an eye on this story in the future. And to be fair, The Athletic even referenced him in an article as well. What's his Twitter account? That's going to really... I'll come back to that. But the guy's got connections in terms of potentially where the origin of where the owners are, and he's trying to find stuff out. He's obviously well connected in terms of what's potentially happened to some of the stuff behind the scenes with Birmingham. What he can't find information out is on in terms of what the sellers are trying to do and who's potentially buying it. He's absolutely adamant, though, that it's not Bassini, and it can't be. And I even think as well, just taking this on face value, let's say it was Lawrence Bassini. He ain't fucking passing fit and proper test, is he?
No.
So what is this?
You mentioned it might be a front for someone else wanting to take over the club.
I got a theory. There is one thing on Bassini which doesn't strike a note. On one of the articles, which was also on The Athletic, before Lee Bowyer was very recently sacked, which was kind of the prompt for me then to say, we really need to look into this. Bassini had been mentioned previously before Bowyer was sacked, and they were saying there's a chance he might get booted. Bowyer himself said sort of in May, not sure if the owners want to keep hold of me or stuff. And there was an article in there that said that Bassini's intention was to appoint Mark Warburton as the manager to take over from Lee Bowyer. Now, Mark Warburton, he might be at QPR, formerly Brentford, Rangers, has now taken a job as David Moyes' assistant at West Ham United.
Yay!
That won't be the first West Ham United connection. And the person he wanted to employ as Warburton's assistant was John Eustace, who was Watford captain when Bassini was chairman at Watford. John Eustace has just been given the job, the first team job. That's a little strange to me. That's a real alarm bell. That there might be something there as a connection. I also mentioned, obviously, West Ham. And the reason West Ham come up in conversation is because, out of Bassini's own mouth, on TalkSport, while threatening to kill and beat up Simon Jordan and various other rantings that were coming out of him, was that David Sullivan was involved somewhere.
Yeah, he's mentioned David Sullivan's name a couple of times.
Correct.
And a lady with football experience.
Couldn't possibly be Karen Brady, could it?
Well, how many other women are there with football experience?
Well, there are loads, in fairness.
Yeah, but we're connected to David Sullivan, who also used to be MD at Birmingham City.
Used to be at Birmingham.
It could be a smokescreen that he's. It could be a smokescreen that he's using.
Now, I'm not suggesting that this is true, but here's what we know on West Ham. The Czech owner who's got a percentage in the company now is Humsuj.
Oh, you put me on the spot.
He's your owner. Kretinsky, is it?
Yes, Daniel Kretinsky.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I saved you again there. This is meant to be your podcast.
20%.
He's 20%. But in March next year, he can buy the whole football club.
Correct. I think this is to do with the London Stadium.
Correct.
The Olympic Stadium. We had a minimum 10-year, if they got the stadium on the cheap free rent, let's be honest. Yeah.
Now, under Football Association rules, you can't own two football clubs in this country, quite purely because it might make, obviously, West Ham and Birmingham are Premier League and Championship. What happens if they draw each other in the third round of the FA Cup? That's pretty conflicting. We've got someone who's bought 21.6% of Birmingham City Football Club. We, a month later, still don't know who that is. Bassini's saying he's got the money to be involved. He is such a strange man in terms of his ramblings that I don't ever believe he was meant to mention David Sullivan by name. I mean,
he just goes off on one, doesn't he?
Yeah, mate, exactly.
Just goes off on one.
And I'm looking at it and going, is it possible that David Sullivan is buying back Birmingham City, but they can't say that right now because that's got to be off the books, because technically, although we know he's stepping away from West Ham, technically he can't pass over full control until March next year. And Bassini's a middleman. Is that possible?
It's more than possible.
That's just me putting dots together. It makes a lot
of logical sense. A lot of logical sense when you the previous connection with the club, the fact that he might want to stay within football.
This is just a theory of mine, by the way. There's nothing to suggest that. And the thing is,
David
accurate.
Sullivan's always been second fiddle to David Gold, the minority share. They've never been equal partners. Gold has always been owned more of West Ham.
David Gold's not been mentioned.
Yeah, so Sullivan might be thinking now's my time to go and do my own thing.
Possibly.
And go back to Birmingham, and it's cheap, and it's a club he knows, and an area that he knows.
What I would say...
And they didn't do badly. They really levelled it up while they were there.
Birmingham City Football Club, and listen, the most important thing of all this, we can take the piss out of Bassini, whatever, and we've spoken about this with Derby and Wigan, other clubs, and Derby, thankfully, now look like they're on the right footing, but they look like they had a really narrow, lucky escape with this Chris Kirkner, who was just a complete chancer, basically, and had other people involved who weren't doing the right thing for their future. Derby looked like mean, Derby are actually buying footballers and look like they might come back even to the Championship next season. Touch wood, good luck to them. The most important thing for Birmingham City is for the football fans. We keep saying this and keep screaming this about letting people come into football clubs that are dodgy. That's why I said, surely Bassini can't pass fit and proper persons test anyway. But, I mean, this is all shady with Birmingham City anyway. They need to know there's a future. The one thing I do think, and West Ham fans might disagree with this, but I'm sorry, it's absolutely accurate. If David Sullivan buys Birmingham, the first thing I'd think is that's okay.
Yeah. Steady ship. Steady ship.
I would be absolutely certain he's not going to... Listen, he might not do anything with it. He might try and make a little bit of money for himself. Will he let the football club dissolve and die and ruin and stuff?
No chance.
I don't
He's
think so.
too shrewd for that. He's too shrewd for that. I think the first thing you think is just give me some stability. Give me some stability. I don't think it'd be a particularly bad thing. If Lawrence Bassini takes over, fucking find yourself another club to support.
You can't do that. It's not how it works, Suj. You can't choose another club.
It might go bust.
Well, it's been thing after thing after thing with Birmingham City. Did you read anything about this mysterious Mr. King?
No. But it is a bit sus.
So, the sources close to the EFL, and the EFL is worth saying at the moment, because a lot of people said, why have the EFL not come out and said if... denied Bassini's interest. Where the EFL put out a statement very recently, over the last week, saying there's not really anything for us to comment on because we've not been notified of anything. So there's nothing technically that the EFL can do. But they believe that they are still looking into the ownership structure around Birmingham. And what many sources who various journalists have spoken to over the years doing investigative work on Birmingham mention as a gentleman called Mr. King, who we think is the top boss at Birmingham City, but Birmingham City deny that he exists.
Mr. Red, Mr. Blue, Mr. Who knows?
Wang Yohi, also known as Mr. King. But Birmingham City deny any knowledge of who he is. And that's probably a rabbit hole for part 2. Quite possibly. I want to find that Twitter account, so just crack on for a second.
It's going to unravel over time. This is the Twitter account you shared with me.
Oh, yes, it is. Have you got it?
Let's have a look. Yes. Al Majir.
That's your guy, yeah.
So ALMAJIR. Al Majir. James will give you a retweet, and anyone can head over to Planet FPL Pod and find it.
He wrote a really interesting piece,
yeah.
Which doesn't give any, to be honest, anything too... It was more kind of defend himself in terms of how he's trying to get information. Basically, he'd spent some times out in Asia and stuff, and he doesn't know the owners directly, but he knows people who know the owners and stuff. He's absolutely adamant that Bassini's not the guy fronting this up.
Yeah, I would agree with him. It doesn't make logical sense. I don't think he's got the money, and I don't think he's got the sense.
That. And look, it is worth saying we can't prove that Bassini doesn't have the money. Maybe from these companies somehow, from somewhere else, he does. But it seems a fabrication to me. What's in it for him? If this is all fabrication, we had the guy, what was his name? The boxer, who also went on a radio station, didn't he? And said he was, I don't know if it was TalkSport as well. Who said he was going to buy Derby County,
yeah.
And he just disappeared. And it was like, why are you doing that? And it was like, it was publicity. Is that? And then also you'd have to look at it and go, TalkSport they shouldn't be letting him on.
No, exactly that. But then they love the controversy, don't they? That's what it's all about. Anyone who wants to, like, if you just YouTube search Lawrence Bassini, you'll find the clips from TalkSport. It's bonkers.
Yeah, YouTube might be safer than some other searches.
Indeed. We'll revisit this as and when the takeover finally happens and we see what's happening, and we'll probably touch base a little bit on Birmingham City throughout the season because it's probably going to be a long, tough one for them.
They are, to kind of summarise as well, in terms of if they don't get outgoings out of the club or don't get fresh injection, they are almost definitely going to hit a points deduction, I would have thought, this year. If they don't... if they sell players or whatever, then they'll be fine. But they're coming into the third year where the last 2 years have been a certain amount. They are likely to hit a points deduction. They are going to struggle anyway. One of the reasons they stayed up last year was because of Derby's mass points deduction. Obviously, Reading had a points deduction as well. So they are going to struggle. I don't know if anything's happening with the stadium. It must be quite a scary and nervous time for Birmingham fans. I think this time last year, the whole story was Derby County. I think the story of this next 12 months is going to be Birmingham City. Some of the money in football stories that we will do on our Patreon network soon include Everton. Obviously, we know Peter Kenyon, the consortium, are quite interested in buying the club. We think Mashiri's possibly ready to step away. A fascinating story, which I think me and you have got different wires on this, with Staines.
Oh, yeah. Needs to do a bit more
that's
investigation into that.
That could be about a 12-hour podcast, I think, but we'll try and keep it down to 45 minutes or an hour or so. We've got a few things lined up.
NFTs,
always
rearing their head.
We're definitely going to do that at some stage because people keep asking us. You need to convince me. Blatter and Platini, as you said, I think Football Index is something we'll have another look at as well. We've got our eye on that. So loads. This is going to be a regular Patreon pod that we'll do. It won't be every Tuesday because we're going to kind of flip it up with when there's Premier League, midweek football,
and what have you.
We do Champions League pods on a Tuesday. But yeah, it will be a regular slot, and we'll probably be a bit more brutal about it than we've been on this podcast because Suj doesn't want the phone call. But I'll look down the camera for the benefit of YouTube viewers and go, Lawrence Bassini, if you're watching, get in touch, help@planetfpl.com, send us an email and come on the pod and we can chat.
Tomorrow is possibly one of the funniest podcasts we do, which is the quiz, because James has my knowledge, or limited lack of thereafter. So join us tomorrow for a general knowledge quiz on FPL. It'll be a fun A to Z format and see how
Premier
League.
On. It's not an FPL quiz.
Premier League A to Z. Lovely jubbly. So enjoy your baking hot Tuesday, and we're back at you tomorrow. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Good luck to Birmingham fans. Cue music, please, man child.